The simple fact of the matter is, I don't like pickup trucks. I'm more of an SUV, sports car, compact executive saloon sort of person. But for what it's worth, I do understand why pickup trucks are so appealing. With our inclement weather, with our very varied geography, a pickup truck does seem to present the best of both worlds, a passenger car and a utilitarian machine when needed. And admittedly, pickup trucks have gotten better and better with every year. They are now a lot less utilitarian, a lot more refined, a lot more usable on a day-to-day basis. But that said, I've always maintained that pickup trucks are ever so slightly short of what you'd get from an SUV. And an SUV can do most of the things that people would expect a pickup truck to do. A pickup truck's capabilities are very rarely used properly. But that said, I've been spending the weekend with this, the new Mazda BT-50, equipped with a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel under the bonnet, a full suite of active safety systems, a brown leather interior with an 8-speaker audio system. This is perhaps the most refined pickup truck currently available on the Malaysian market. And if you'd like to understand why, please continue watching the video, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button. Now, the thing about pickup trucks is they are a bit of a statement, and they do say a lot more about you than perhaps any other vehicle. And the Mazda BT-50 certainly has a lot to say. Even though this is ultimately based on the Isuzu D-Max, Mazda has done a lot to really make this thing unique. So for starters, you get the typical Mazda grille, which is absolutely enormous on the BT-50, and it's flanked by LED bi-beam headlights with LED daytime running lights in the typical Mazda signature. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the indicators are actually down here along with the positioning lights, which are bulbs. And so when you have the positioning lights on, it doesn't look quite as unique as it could if the LED rings and so on would illuminate properly. There are also LED fog lights down there. Now, down the side, because this is the 3-litre, you get 18-inch dual-tone alloy wheels. For the 1.9 high automatic, which is the other variant that we'd recommend, you get 17-inch alloy wheels. Now down the side, you get roof rails. That's again unique to the 3-litre, but as standard you do get the chrome door caps and, wing mirror caps and the chrome door handles. You also get the side step as standard. Now at the back, you get a typical truck bed, which is what trucks are all about. But as I said earlier, because this is based on the Isuzu D-Max, the first Mazda BT-50 to be based on an Isuzu, in fact the first pickup truck for a long time from Mazda that isn't based on a Ford Ranger, the back end does look very similar to what you'd get from the D-Max. However, the design of the tailgate has been simplified, and of course you get the typical Mazda scripting, again to signify that this is a Mazda. Now, the thing about a pickup truck is it has to do pickup truck things, and things that are important to pickup truck buyers are things like the bed size, which I don't actually know. But for most passenger car type users, for more casual users, the things that are most important is that you have a tailgate, which unfortunately is not assisted, so this is actually quite heavy. You can open and close it with one arm, but it is a little bit of a strain. Now, once it is open, however, you get 4 tie-down hooks. This is a standard, typical size bed for a dual cab pickup. And you have the bed liner that comes as standard. Like I said, you have the tie-down hooks, which are very, very strong, but there's no other features back here. Vehicles like the Ford Ranger, which we haven't actually technically sampled, does come with more amenities in the back, like a bed light, for example. And also the BT-50, even in this 3-litre, guys, does not come with a sports bar, which is a very important stylistic aspect for trucks like these. I'm not sure why Mazda doesn't offer it, and it certainly would improve the look of this truck, but as it is, I do think this is one of the better looking trucks out there. I'm certainly not complaining about the way it looks. I've enjoyed my weekend with it, but the thing about the BT-50 is its looks are not just limited to the outside. The good looks continue inside, where our commentary will continue as well. Now, before we enter the interior, there is one more feature I'd like to point out, which is exclusive to the Mazda BT-50 3-litre high automatic model, and that is remote start. So via this very pretty looking key, you have the lock and unlock buttons, and then you have this remote start button. So what you do is you have to lock the truck, it'll beep, and then you press and hold this, and then it does that. Now, the truck will remain on for a certain period. I haven't yet been able to figure out just how long that is, but if left unattended, the truck will shut itself off. Now, of course, you can turn it off via the key just by pressing and holding the button, and it switches off. And also, if you were to get into the truck, when you press the button to unlock the truck, it will shut off the engine there to sort of get in the truck and then turn it back on again. Now, talking about locking and unlocking, unfortunately this truck does not have the sensor type door handles. You still have to press a button, but at least the button is available both on the driver and passenger side. Now, inside the Mazda BT-50, there are a lot more Mazda refinements compared to the Isuzu D-Max upon which this car is based. The interior of the BT-50 is a lot more refined. You get this beautiful brown leather on this 3-litre model. The 1.9 high AT only gets black leather. You get more of this brown color on the dash and on the doors, and you even get a little bit of soft touch material up here on the dash with stitching, no less, again to make this car feel a little bit plusher. Obviously, you also get more of this brown leather down here for these knee pads, which are now padded compared to the D-Max, which means that when you're resting your foot here, it does feel a little bit more comfortable. Now, of course, the steering wheel is leather wrapped, that's expected, and in the center you have a pretty large touchscreen which comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wired, unfortunately, even though the Isuzu D-Max does actually have the reputation for being the only pickup truck to offer wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but for some reason this unit in the BT-50 is wired. But that said, it is a very large screen and it's very responsive, and like I said, because it comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which loads automatically the moment you plug your phone in, it means you have very little need to play around with the interface itself. It's a very good system. Now, beyond that, you also have the dials up ahead of you, which are not the fanciest looking things. They're not as sharp as Mazda dials. Obviously, this is something that was taken from Isuzu, and in the middle there is a full color multi-info display which controls all sorts of vehicle settings like your advanced driver assist features, convenience features, and so on and so forth. Obviously, your trip and your fuel consumption gauges are all in there. You also get this multi-function steering wheel within which sits all the buttons for your hands-free, your phone, and your audio settings. And then on the right side you have things for your adaptive cruise control as well as the multi-info display stuff. Now, in terms of practicality, being a pickup truck, there is plenty of space. You actually have a little cubby up here on the dash, a top cubby. You have a lower cubby here, which is considerably larger. You have relatively large door bends, which are large enough to fit a water bottle, which can also fit in the middle. There's also a square-shaped holder back here, which is particularly useful for my specific thermos bottle, and also for cards, and in this case, some Mazda branded hand sanitizer. Now, in the center console, which is, by the way, leather covered and soft, you get absolutely nothing. There isn't even sort of carpeting in here, so if you were to put anything in there, like I put a set of keys in here, they will jangle and make a lot of noise. Another thing that makes a lot of noise actually is the sunglasses holder, which it took me 3 days to figure out a way to put my sunglasses in there in such a way that it wouldn't rattle. But now that they've shut up, they've remained relatively quiet, but like I said, it will take some time to get there. Now, in the back, you get obviously 2 ISOFIX mounts. You can actually fold the seat bases up a little bit for whatever reason. You do get 1 USB-A port and rear aircon vents, which makes this perhaps one of the most comfortable pickup trucks to actually ferry people around in. Now, in terms of the driving experience, obviously we'll have to talk about that in the driving portion, but I'd like to talk first about the variants. Obviously, the BT-50 is available in our market in a plethora of different variants, all imported from Thailand, which start from single cab variants, which is very basic, with very basic specs and features. But of course, when you're talking about using this as a passenger vehicle, as most people will tend to, there are 2 variants that stick out. One is the 1.9 litre high automatic variant, and then there's this, the 3 litre high automatic variant. Now, the 1.9 litre starts at 125,000 and change. This is just under 150,000 and change. And obviously, being a pickup truck, neither of these trucks are exempted from SST, which means these are going to be the prices going forward. Now, between the two, the differences are relatively minor. Like I said earlier, the 1.9 gets slightly smaller wheels, it doesn't get roof rails, it doesn't get this brown leather interior, but most importantly, it also doesn't get the active safety features like this car has. As I said earlier, this car comes with a full suite of active safety features, which include things like adaptive cruise control with stop-start, you get blind spot monitoring, lane departure warning, you get autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection, and overall, it makes this a very usable truck. Oh, it also has automatic high beam using those bi-beam LED headlights, which admittedly is pretty sensitive and I quite enjoy using it. Now, of course, beyond safety, you will look at convenience features. Like I said, this car comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You also get things like dual zone climate control, which is very hard to find in a truck. And all of that is controlled via this control panel, which again is a unique Mazda item. And being typical Mazda, everything is built really nicely and all the buttons and switchgear feel really good. And that is consistent throughout the truck. Now, I know that I'm kind of going back on myself because there's so many nice things to talk about, but of course, the biggest nice thing to talk about is the way it drives. Very typical of Mazda, but let's see if this drives like a typical Mazda, shall we? So, driving the Mazda BT-50. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not really much of a truck person. I'm not a fan of trucks. I am, however, a fan of diesel engines. Now, under the bonnet of this particular truck is the 3-litre 4-cylinder, which puts out a heavy amount of horsepower and torque, with power naturally going to all 4 wheels via a 6-speed automatic gearbox. Now, for the most part, you'll be driving this car in 2 high, although you can switch from 2 to 4 high on the fly at speeds below 100 kilometers an hour. Now, this engine naturally is not going to be as refined as, say, turbo diesel 3-litre in an Audi, but it is a pretty decent thing for what it is, despite the fact that it has quite a lot of performance and torque and pulling power, and it is claimed to be very, very reliable. Despite all of that, this engine is still relatively smooth. Yes, of course, when you're idling, there is a little bit of clatter, and when you accelerate, you will be able to hear a lot of that sort of diesel growling. But that said, once you are up to speed, this engine quietens down quite nicely. In terms of throttle response, in town, this has perhaps the best throttle response of any pickup truck I've driven. And as a result, it means that driving through town speeds and, cut and thrust traffic and stuff like that is surprisingly easy, despite the fact this is a relatively large vehicle. What's also very impressive is the steering wheel. Now, of course, this is in an assisted steering wheel system, and normally in a pickup truck, there would be a lot of sawing at the wheel, especially for tighter maneuvers. But I'm glad to say that in the BT-50, it is surprisingly well balanced. At no point have I felt like this car has been a bit of a handful, which is more than I can say about certain MPVs I've been driving around lately. In terms of refinement, this is where I feel the BT-50 is especially impressive. Like I said earlier, when you're on the throttle, you do hear a little bit of diesel clatter, but once you're up to speed, what amazes me about this car is there is very little in the way of wind noise. Road noise is present but negligible, particularly at speed. At 110, 120 kilometers an hour, there is very, very little road roar, at least no more than what you get in a similarly priced SUV. Wind noise in this car is incredibly impressive because there is barely any. And like I said, you'll hear the engine as you get up to speed, but once you've actually settled down at Malaysian highway speeds, there is almost no noise coming from the engine bay, making this easily a very competent family car. Now, what does detract from the family car thing ever so slightly is in terms of the ride. Now, Mazda, I suspect, hasn't really had a lot of ability to tune the way this car rides, and so as a result, the front end feels planted and predictable, as you'd expect from a pickup truck, but the back end, like a pickup truck, is very bouncy when it's unladen. And so what happens is when you're driving on very smooth surfaces like the southbound section of the North-South Highway, it's nice and comfortable and it's very confidence-inspiring, and that's all well and good. But then when you hit, say, the NKVE with its slightly more rutted surfaces, the back end starts to sort of unsettle the cabin a little bit, which will require you to slow down. It will cause a degree of discomfort to travel through the cabin, and it doesn't really inspire confidence. Similarly, driving through corners, corner carving and stuff like that, this is definitely not the vehicle for you. I think a Mazda SUV would do a lot better than this Mazda truck. But those are the typical truck foibles. What isn't typical for a truck, however, is the active safety features in here. So this car has almost level 2 semi-autonomy. So it has adaptive cruise control with stop and go. It has autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. It's got blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. It also comes with lane departure warning, which is pretty accurate, I must say. But it doesn't come with lane keep assist or lane centering, which would be able to allow this car to claim level 2 semi-autonomy. Now, I'm not actually sure why it is that this car doesn't come with lane keep assist. Because vehicles like the Toyota Hilux, for example, have proven that you can have lane keep assist using your control. Now, at first I thought it was a settings problem. I actually went through all the settings, I pressed all the buttons in this car to try and figure out if there was something I could turn on. I cannot find it. There's only lane departure warning, which is slightly disappointing. But that said, this car does redeem itself in terms of how the adaptive cruise control works, especially the stop-start assist, because this has to be one of the most sophisticated systems I've encountered at this price point. The only ones that I've seen that have done better than this have been on proper luxury cars. The way this car gains speed, of course, is a little bit rough, because that's typical. When a vehicle with ACC detects a vehicle in front has moved away, it tries to accelerate very quickly, so that can be a little bit uncomfortable. But the way this car slows down is excellent, because as far as I can tell, it detects the vehicle in front of you very early, and that then allows the car to slow down very gradually. And when you're stuck in traffic, for example, it moves so smoothly, and the follow distance in traffic is Asian specification. If you've tried the ACC or traffic jam assist in a Volvo or a Mercedes-Benz, you'll realize it leaves such a big gap that everyone starts to cut in front of you. Because this system is, I think, better adapted and better suited for Asian driving styles, the gap is small enough in traffic that no one gets the wrong idea. And of course, they are scared away by the fact this car has a very large grille, which is very, very imposing. The thing is, as you can see, I'm sort of beaming a little because I really didn't expect to like this truck. I am not a truck person. My video editor and senior content creator, he loves trucks. He describes himself as a truck bro. And when he saw this, he was overjoyed. But I've been able to spend more time with this truck and whenever I encounter a vehicle that I think I might not like, I try to spend as much time with it as possible in order to try and break that stereotype, to break those preconceived notions. And I'm glad to say that over the 600 kilometers that I've covered in this truck since I picked it up, which by the way has not even finished the tank, and I'll talk about fuel consumption in a second, it's won me over. I'm still not sold on the ride. I suspect that if I were to buy something like this, if I needed to buy a truck like this, I would probably try and do something to fix the rear end. Either put a couple of bags of cement or maybe try and change the shocks into something a little bit more pliant. But for what it's worth, of all the trucks I've driven, this has to be the one that I like most. There is something about it that's just really nice. And I know some of you will ask, well, if you like this truck, why don't you like the Isuzu D-Max? Now, I do like the D-Max for what it's worth. I think the powertrains which the D-Max shares with this car are also very good. The 1.9 especially, which we hope to be reviewing in the BT-50 very soon. That engine is fantastic. But the thing about the D-Max is that it's a little bit rough and ready. There's a little bit more utilitarianism in there, which kind of makes sense because anyone who buys an Isuzu buys it knowing that these trucks are rough and ready. They're made for the purpose of utility and practicality. They're not here for refinement. They are less about the duality of a modern pickup truck. They're more about being a traditional pickup truck. And so in that sense, you can forgive an Isuzu of a lot of things. But in this BT-50, Mazda has done just enough to rework the surface so that this truck presents itself very, very differently from the D-Max. And as a result, this, to me, I feel is one of the best all-round pickups currently available on the market. Of course, there are some caveats. Number one, the Nissan Navara, I haven't actually driven the facelift Navara yet, so that's a little bit of a question mark there, but I have driven the pre-facelift and I have to say it wasn't nearly as good as this. I also have never driven the Ford Ranger, not officially at least, and so I can't really talk much about its capabilities until Ford actually lends me one to test. However, I have driven the Hilux, I have driven the Navara, I've driven plenty of pickup trucks in the market. And the D-Max has always been very impressive, but now that I've tried this, like I said, I really do like this truck. But if you're thinking about getting one for yourself, I would advise that you consider two things. One, how important is active safety to you? And I certainly hope it is very important, because if it is, then unfortunately you have to buy the BT-50 3-litre high automatic, because it's the only one that comes with a full suite of active safety. However, if you're driving in town most of the time and would appreciate slightly better fuel economy, then the 1.9 is actually the vehicle that I'd recommend. It comes with most of the bells and whistles that this car comes with, and that engine is a lot better suited for urban driving. But that said, even this 3-litre over the last 600 odd kilometers has been doing a steady 9.1 litres per 100 kilometers, which, yes, it's not as economical as a Vios, but then again, you bought a pickup truck. What were you expecting? 9.1 is actually very respectable for a truck of this size, of this weight, and with this sort of performance. I think that's very respectable, and I think that also if you were to maybe not drive it through as much traffic, you can definitely get better fuel economy. When I took this out on a highway run over about a 60-kilometer period, this car was doing about 8 litres per 100 kilometers, so it is very easy to bring this engine to heel. But again, if your daily commute requires you to drive through traffic on the LDP, like where I am now, then you will probably fare a little bit better with the 1.9. That's definitely the engine that I would recommend for urban drivers. But if you want the full fat experience and you intend to use your truck the way it's meant to, I think you would definitely appreciate this 3-litre. In any case, I'm certainly walking away from this review very, very impressed. The Mazda BT-50 is a much, much, much better package than I certainly could have expected. I am totally blown away by this. And hand on heart, if I had to buy a pickup, I think this might be the one for me. And I certainly hope that this review has helped reveal whether or not this could be the pickup truck for you, because that's been our review of the Mazda BT-50 3-litre. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Please remember, every subscribe counts. All of you guys are what makes us able to do this job, and we are grateful for every single one of you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, jangan bodoh.